Okay, tonight we're starting on chapter 4, book of Mark, Kingdom Parables and Kingdom Power. Verse 1, And again he began to teach by the sea, and a great multitude was gathered to him, so that he got into a boat and sat in it on the sea, and the whole multitude was on the land facing the sea. Then he taught them many things by parables, and said to them in his teaching, Listen, behold, a sower went out to sow, and it happened as he sowed that some seed fell by the wayside, and the birds of the air came and devoured it. Some fell on stony ground, where it did not have much earth, and immediately it sprang up, because it had no depth of earth. But when the sun was up, it was scorched, and because it had no root, it withered away. And some seed fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it, and it yielded no crop. But other seed fell on good ground, and yielded a crop that sprang up, increased, and produced, some 30-fold, 60-fold, and 100-fold. And he said unto them, He who has ears to hear, let him hear. There's a lot in this. The first part tells us that he taught them many things by parables, okay? We don't know exactly if we heard all the parables. Probably not, okay? Even though you had Matthew and John writing these down, and then Mark maybe through Peter, and Luke maybe through somebody else. We don't know all the parables that Jesus told. But this one is an important one. This one is kind of trying to get to the point. And it's not just this part, it's the next part too. So he was talking again, as we talked about last week. Again, he had a boat ready last week. This week he got into a boat and pushed off from the ocean or the shore to get away from them a little bit. And that way, that's acoustics, like we talked about last week. You get out on a lake and you talk, and then it just carries across. I think I'm telling you guys, last time I went fishing several years ago now, we was out on Claremore Lake, and we had Dan's kids with us. They carried it with us too. But anyway, they were talking, and somebody said Pop or Dad or Papa or something, and I looked up because I thought it was one of them. But it was a bunch of others across the lake that had said it. They were, I could see them out there, but it was them. So the sound carries very well out on a lake, and that's one reason why they went ahead and was out there. And most of the time, especially around the Lake of Galilee, we said last week it's below sea level. So just about the land going up from it is all going to rise to some extent. So some greatly and some not so greatly. But there was a rise here. When we went out to see the lake, and actually went out on the lake, first we went up to the north part where several things took place, and they think, at least where, some of them, and it was gentle. It was a nice slope hill up there, and they said this could have been the place. They stopped at another place, and they said this could have been the place where it got 5,000. This could be, they don't know exactly where everything was at because there's not markers. I mean, there are a lot of markers, but it's like, we think it's here, we think it's here, we think it's here. Everybody has their own opinion. But he's telling them a story, and we always talk about this is the parable of the sowers. Well, it's not really. There's one sower here. A sower went out to sow. That's what it talks about. What this is really about is parable of the soils. Okay? Because you have good soil, you have hard pack, you have rock, road, you have thorny, all these things, and this is what's telling us. Then the disciples had a problem with this. They didn't know what he was talking about. You're telling us all these things by parables. Now, why did Jesus teach by parables? What is a parable? Brother Epson does go on. It's a story. Okay? It's just a story. Sometimes the story is actual. It happened, and that way it can relate to somebody. You know, somebody it happened to you, and what I tell you, just like that story I tell you out there on that was a story. It was be a parable if you want to say it that way. But this particular one is talking about a man that was going out to plant his field. Now, he's not going to go out and plant in the road, is he? The road's not tilled. Okay? But he tilled alongside the road. We do that today. We see the big combines and the big tractors going up and down the roads, county roads sometimes. And some of that seed, you'll notice if you ever see a nice field of wheat or corn or everything, it's not, it's a semi-straight line, but it's not a straight line. Even though they plow straight, they're putting that in the ground. And some of that seed, even though they're putting it down, it falls off, it flips off one side, flips off to another. And this is what happened here. Some fell on the wayside, some fell to the path. Well, that path is packed hard. It's a road back in that. And unless that seed gets down in the ground, it's not going to do anything. Okay? It may pop open, but then it'll die because the seed's got to contact the ground, have the ground in it. Whenever they tell us on the little packages you have, when you plant seed, they tell you a half inch, quarter inch, eighth inch, inch deep, whatever. But then they tell you put it in there and then kind of push down on it. Water it, that water pushes down on it. And that compacts and gets it in contact with that seed. Well, this way they didn't have it. The pathway, the wayside, rocky ground. Sometimes we go across stuff up there where we live. Brother Epson and I know on my side, I have several rocks sticking out of the ground that when I mow over, I've kind of worked them out. But I've got one rock that it's in the backyard, almost down by the fence. I have to mow around. I mean, I can go over it, the blade won't hit, but I have to be careful. So, because it sticks up, and it's got to be a huge rock, because I've tried to kind of dig around it. So I don't want to, I moved one rock that was probably this big when we first got there. It was out in my bar ditch, or close to it. So I just left it. But if it falls on that, the seed's not going to grow, per se, unless there's some soil on top of the rock. If there is, then it might sprout, but what will it do? Dies away because there's no soil. You get there where we live, and I had to move around where my garden's at because there's some stones there. Like I said, I didn't want to build right, have that, unless I built the soil up. And even then, you only have that much soil, it's going to burn up. I've got a septic tank out where I live, and when we moved there was about that much soil on it, and had grass and everything. Well, it's washed away and everything, and you can almost see the top of the tank now. I had to put some more ground on it. Of course, all of the grass is dead now and everything, because when it warms up, that just fries that grass, that seed. It can't stand that much heat and doesn't get any water. Even though it gets a little water, it doesn't get much. It can't go down that far. And some even, the ground is good, but there's a bunch of thorns in it. Out next to our house, we had a bunch of bushes that was up against the house to kind of protect the windows and things like that, landscape. They were little hollies, and I got miniature hollies when I started, and they're about that big. Well, they got a little overgrown, and I cut them back, and I cut them back a little too hard, I guess, because they are miniatures, and they're only miniatures because they dwarfed them. They grafted them in. I cut the graft off evidently because they were kind of huge. They were just huge plants, so we had them dug out. And so I would plant along that flower bed. It's about 5-6 feet wide. Take the tiller, till it all up, plant. Looks real good. About a week later, 2 weeks later, the plants start popping up. That ain't what I planted. It's a bunch of that old stuff that was there from a long time ago. Not so much thorns, but it's what was there. So it wasn't that the farmer was stupid or careless in sowing his seed, because some seed falls off. We know some seed's not going to work. Whenever I plant, and I'm not an expert farmer, but I just do it. We've got a tray that's got 72 of those little patches. I usually put one seed in each one of those. But then I've got some that are bigger cups, and I'll plant 2 or 3 seeds in each one of those. Because if one of them doesn't come up, it's okay. It's a seed. You know, from that seed, the one seed that I get, if it's tomato or whatever, I may get 20, 30, or 40 tomatoes off of it. Each tomato has probably 100 or 200 seeds in it. I can get more seeds. So, but it's got to have the soil, the right soil. So that's what it's saying here. It came upon the soils. It's actually the soils instead of the sower. The sower goes out and does his business. He does what he's supposed to do. If it's good ground, then it says you're going to get some increase, some 30-fold, some 60, and some 100. Okay, Brother Epperson, 10 through 12.
But when he was alone, those around him with the 12 asked him about the parable. And he said to them, to you it has been given to know the mystery of the kingdom of God. But to those who are outside, all things come in parables, so that seeing they may see and not perceive, and hearing they may hear and not understand, lest they should turn and their sins be forgiven them.
Okay. Sounds a little harsh, doesn't it? He's teaching them in a way, but what he's actually saying, this is a mystery, a kingdom, but they've been taught for thousands of years what's going to happen. He's coming and he's telling them something different. And that difference is enough that it's going to bother those people. Some people are going to hear him and they say, it just don't sound right. That's not what I know. That happens to us today too. Okay? But we need to go back and check the Word and see if it's there. But here, they didn't have the Word. Okay? All they had was the Old Testament. And he was trying to tell them of what was going to happen. So this mystery of the kingdom is what he's going to tell them exactly what's going to be happening in the next few verses with that other one. He told people this story, and they go, oh, okay, yeah, I can see that. And it's a story that people can relate to. They were agricultural people. They sowed, they, raised crops and things like that. So they understood that. But there's a deeper message than just that. So notice that even with this simple parable, the disciples themselves didn't understand. And it's not just the 12, if you read what he said there. Those others that followed him, those around him with the 12, asked him about the parable. Okay? We go back to Jesus had a lot more than just 12 people following him. So some of these people, they didn't quite get what was going on. Even his disciples didn't at first. It says the parable isn't exactly an illustration. A good teacher can illustrate by stating a truth and then illustrating that truth through a story or an analogy. But when Jesus used parables, he didn't start by stating a truth. Instead, the parable was like a doorway. Jesus' listeners stood at the doorway and they heard him. If they were not interested, they stayed on the outside. But if they were interested, they could walk through the doorway and think about the truth behind the parable and what it meant to their lives. As if you don't understand the key to the parable, you don't understand it at all. We can imagine what different people in Jesus' audiences might have thought when he taught this parable with no explanation. The farmer thought, he's telling me I have to be more careful in the way I throw my seed out. I guess I'm wasting a lot. That's what the farmer got out of it. The politician thought, he's telling me that I need to begin a farm education program to help farmers more efficiently cast their seed. This will be a big boost to my re-election campaign. Boy, that sure sounds right. The newspaper reporter thought, he's telling me there's a big story here about the bird problem and how it affects the farming community. That's a great idea for a series on the paper. Okay? The salesman thought, he's encouraging me in my fertilizer sales. Why? I could help the farmer more than he knows if he only used my product. So everybody listens with their frame of mind, what they are. And that's what they were telling them. It's trying to tell the disciples, you're my disciples. You know what I've been teaching. You know all this thing, so you understand. These other people, they don't understand. And it's not that they're listening, but it's just not registering with them what's going on. It said none of them could understand the spiritual meaning until Jesus explained the key to them. The sower sows the word. That's Mark 4:14. If you miss this key, okay, the sower has to sow the word. Many times there's one thing I like about The Chosen. A lot of things I like about The Chosen. But the one thing that Dallas usually ends his conferences and television things with when he's doing a live event, he said, your job is not to feed the 5,000. Your job is to bring the loaves and the fishes. We have to bring what we have. Whatever we have, that's what we present to God, and God will take care of it. We don't have to do it. So here, the sower, he had the seed. He came there and he had the seed, but the sower was the one that, if that wasn't right, and who is the sower in this instance? It's Jesus. He's sowing the word. He's telling them the word and trying to explain to them, you guys aren't going to, some of you guys are out on the edge of the road. This is going to just go over your head. Some of you are in the edge of the field. It's hard and thorny and everything, and it'll pop up, it'll grow for a little bit, then it'll die off. And then some of you guys will get it. You understand what I'm trying to tell you, and it'll grow. The ministry will grow. And it did grow. It grew like crazy after he died, okay, after he was resurrected. So it says, lest they should turn in their ways, their sins be forgiven. This is a passage from Isaiah 6 and 9. Jesus explained why he used parables and teaching by parables. Jesus offered his hearers the opportunity to dig deeper and find the truth, or to turn a blind eye to an interesting story. They might therefore avoid a greater condemnation for having rejected a clearly understood truth. It's easy to come to a class and be taught, okay? But if that's all that you're doing, you're not doing all you can do. You need to go on and either take what, if you didn't understand something I said, or Brother Epperson said, or whoever, you need to go back and start digging into it yourself until you understand it. Or start asking questions of somebody else. That you got to be careful who you ask. But so it is the starting point for you personally to get on board and to try to find out what the meaning of this is. Sometimes it'll be, we don't have to have, sometimes we get so caught up that everything in the Bible is, I'm missing something. Well, no. Some of it's very plain. Sin, sin. That's easy, but some people try to really make it hard. So here he's telling them, he didn't use the parables to blind people, but because they were blind. Therefore, Jesus used the parabolic method, not in order to blind them, but in order to make them look again, not in order to prevent them from coming to forgiveness, but in order to lure them toward a new attention. If you'll be going on, and I listened to a conference today, I was listening to an ancestry conference, and I was actually doing some ancestry genealogy on the side. Yeah, I've heard that. She's just going on and on and on. Like, wait, what'd you say? Something caught my thought. And I'm like, oh, okay, I can glean. That's one thing I can glean. Listen to this for an hour, and I get one or two little things that I didn't know. Hey, that helps. And that's the way it was. Every time we went to a conference, or every time we went to wherever, even the pastors, coming to church or Bible study or anything you do, listening on television, listen for that one or two things that piques your interest. and then start, if you didn't understand it or didn't, start digging into it. Okay? Because some things will just click and you say, I never thought of it that way. And that's what Jesus is trying to get them to do. But a lot of people don't. They miss that point, and then they just go on.
I'm digging into Revelations right now. I bought a book that's supposed to make that more.
Good luck.
Explain
Good
it.
luck. Okay, do you want to read the next one, Iris? 13 through 20. It's on page 5. It's a little lengthy.
And he said to them, do you not understand this parable? How then will you understand all the parables? The sower sows the word, and these are the ones by the wayside where the word is sown. Why, when they hear Satan comes immediately and takes away the word that was sown in their hearts. These likewise are the ones sown on stony ground who, when they hear the word, immediately receive it with gladness, and they have no root in themselves, and so endure only for a time. Afterward, when tribulation or persecution arises for the word's sake, immediately they stumble. Now these are the ones sown among thorns. They are the ones who hear the word, and the cares of this world, the deceitfulness of riches, and the desires for other things entering in choke the word, and it becomes unfruitful. But these are the ones sown on good ground, those who hear the word, accept it, and bear fruit, some 30-fold, some 60, and some 100.
Okay? Now, he's not really talking about soil here, right? What is he talking about? Individuals. What part of us? What do we call man? Our soul, our heart. If you want to use it that way. He's looking on the heart. Those that have a good heart, ones that's, or mind, or however you want to talk about it, is available for him to listen and understand. That's who is going to get out of this. If your heart's too full with other stuff, and that word comes in, and you, oh yeah, that's good. And then just a little while later, the stuff that's in your life gets in the way, and it dies out. Okay, the stony ground, it just kind of bounces off. Yeah, it may take root, but it dies off quickly. So that's what he's telling here, that it's really our lives. He's sowing this word. The word is what he's telling them right then, and it's telling it to the people. First, there has to be a sower, then there has to be the word. And from that, we can take that out, just like he's doing. He sent his disciples out to do the very same thing. Some people, we see some of them was completely rejected. He told them, he said, hey, you're going to be, some people's going to kick you out. Just shake that sand off, out of your shoe. They don't want you. And then some of them, you're going to have some success. You're going to have, people are going to listen. They're going to hear what you, oh man, that's great. That sounds like, what Jesus was preaching. That's what they were trying to tell them.
When you read this, going through this, I thought about there in Corinthians where Paul said that godly sorrow worketh repentance,
Right.
that not be repentant. And I thought, man, if you really get that in your heart, you understand why sometimes you see 3 or 4 or 5 people get saved about the same time. Some of them go on and listen. It all depends on how they receive that.
How they received it, yeah. Is it get down deep in them? You can see it in the person, like I said. If they come back and they get a taste of it, okay, they like it, and then after a little while they fall off or fall away, and then, it's not, he's not trying to hide it from them at all. But they're just not willing to listen. They're not willing to. There are some people today that want $20 an hour minimum wage, but they don't want to work $20. They just want that. That's why it's called a minimum wage. Well, I can go get any job, and if it's pushing a broom and $20, that'd be good money. Well, some people ain't gonna pay $20 for pushing a broom. That's just the way it is. We have to be in that mode to want it. If you want a job, what do? You go out there and start looking, start asking, start trying to find a job. Yeah, it may not be the perfect job, and it may not pay what you want. A lot of the kids coming out of school on $100,000 a year, that don't happen, not very often. So you got to work for it, and if it's now a doctor, okay, I get that. Yeah, you put in a lot of time and money, but I'm talking about these basket weavers and everything else, that all the degrees you can get now that ain't worth anything. And it gives some more examples of the hard hearts must be plowed up before they can receive the seed, and this can be painful, it says, and talks about in Jeremiah and Hosea. The ones on stony ground who, when they hear the word, they receive it with gladness, but there's no root. Okay? Some people like this ground that is rocky, but covered with a thin layer of soil. They receive the word in a flash of enthusiasm, but it quickly burns out. When tribulation or persecution arises, they stumble. There's just no root in them. I say root. Some people say root. I don't know what the right pronunciation is. The last part of this, let's see. Okay, well, this quote by Spurgeon. Then there are many more whose religion must be sustained by enthusiastic surroundings. They seem to be baptized in boiling water, and unless the temperature around them is kept up to that point, they wither away. The religion that is born of mere excitement will die when the excitement is over. There's a lot of people that they get caught up in that. They go to Saturday, Sunday service. And I've been to a few of them, and yeah, it's like a rah-rah service. I mean, you get in there and you feel good, but then when you leave, did you get anything? If you didn't get anything, it's not worth anything. Now, some of them are good, but some of them aren't. It says, this parable deals with a problem that is greatest of all to the thoughtful mind. How is it that the scribes and Pharisees can so misrepresent him? And how is it that his kindred and disciples totally fail to comprehend him? Why does not the hearing of the doctrine produce the same result in every heart? It's just like talking. If you're not listening to me, you're not going to hear what I say. If you're off doing something else, you're not going to listen. You'll hear something, and you may have heard it. I talk to Darla, and if I'm halfway listening or watching the television, I'll get something. She told me something today to call her mom and dad about something. And when she got back, she said, "Did you call mom and dad?" She told me to call mom and dad. Yeah, I think I did. And then after a few minutes, oh yeah, you did, didn't you? Okay, you told me to tell that. Okay, no, I didn't. So we have to keep focused on what we're doing and what's being told to us. We have to do that. 21 through 23. It's the bottom. Starts at the bottom of page 7 there. You want to read that for us, Ruby?
And he also said to them, is a lamp brought to be put under a basket or under a bed? It is not to be set. Is it not to be set on a lampstand? For there is nothing hidden which is not to be revealed, nor is this anything been kept secret, but as this should be come to light, if anyone has ears to hear, let him hear.
Okay. So this goes back, it's where Jesus was teaching in Matthew. We see Matthew puts it a little different way. you have a light, you put it under a bushel. No, you let the light shine. That's what he's doing here. Same thing. Mark is repeating in a little different way. Well, if I had a candle, why in the world do I put a cover over it? You know, today we put a lampshade on it to kind of, because our lamps are bright, and if you're looking at that all the time, it kind of, but it focuses it down or focuses it up or however you do it. But here it's trying to show us or to reveal what is that light is there for us. If Bertha cleaned the church in the dark, I don't know if we get too far. We have a bunch of bumps and bruises, but you know, that don't work so good. That don't work so good. We got
where's the mop?
we got to turn the light on to see what we're doing, and that's what
You
it's.
said the rooms are dark enough anyway.
Yeah, that's right. We don't get a lot of light, especially in the church, unless the lights are on.
I always wondered why we didn't have windows.
This is the way that 90% of the churches was built. It's just the way it was.
I like daylight.
Bertha, the next one, 24 and 25.
Then he said to them, take heed what you hear, with the same measure you use. It will be measured to you, and to you who hear, more will be given. For whoever has, to him more will be given, but whoever does not have, even what he has, will be taken away from him.
Okay, it's kind of mean the way I was doing earlier this morning. I was listening half-heartedly. I wasn't, what was going on. I wasn't heeding what she was hearing, what I should have been hearing. It didn't make register. Maybe I heard it, but it didn't register in my mind. And it was measured back to me. Okay, well, yeah, I can't rely on you, yeah.
I'll go with back.
So we have to. So that's opening it up to them. If you want to hear this, if you want to understand this, and be here, you can. But you have to put some effort into it. That's what he's telling them. And this also goes on to kind of the parable of the talents, where one has one, more gets, one of the higher talents gets more, and the lesser one, he hides his, and he don't get any. Well, his is taken away and given to somebody else. So that's what it's talking about here. More will be given to those that it's a never resting position with Jesus. You ever climbed a rope in the old gym at high school? It was about as tall as the peak of here, and you'd have to climb that rope on a 2-inch mat that's supposed to save your life if you fall. Because I let go about halfway up one time. But you're up there, what do? You got to keep going.
Yeah.
And then once you're up there, you ain't going to stay. You got to come back down. So there's some things, and that's where our life is. We reach a peak. Sometimes we go up and we reach, we understand it, we comprehend it, we have to come back down then. And it's not that we lose it, but something else comes along, and we got to be careful so that we stay on that. But it's always, hopefully going up. We're going up and down, but we're always building to Christ. 26 through 29. And he said, the kingdom of God is as if a man should scatter seed on the ground, and should sleep by night and rise by day, and the seed should sprout and grow. He himself does not know how. For the earth yields crops by itself. First the blade, then the head. After that, the full grain in the head. But when the grain ripens, immediately he puts in the sickle, because the harvest has come. The farmer doesn't have to understand exactly what's happening with the seed. Oh, you could go to the scientists today, the horticulturists and all that, can tell you, yeah, the seed has to get a little moisture in it, starts blooming out, it pops open, and then a little coital something other comes out, first root, first plant, whatever, and it starts getting, and then it gets its sunshine, it makes the photosynthesis, and starts growing. Yeah, he can tell you all about that. Farmer don't care. I mean, he does care, but he doesn't. He just knows, I planted that seed, about 3 or 4 months, I'm going to have to harvest it. So he has to plan. It's just like if I went out there and you had 640 acres of wheat, you planted 640 acres of wheat, and then 3 months comes by and you don't have a harvester combine, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Because somebody's going to have to get that wheat, else it's going to die. Darla's dad, he was, when he was young, he went out this summers and went with the crew on the combine. They went out, started out in Panhandle of Texas, and worked their way back home. And, that's what they do, sun up, sundown, they'd work, get the wheat in. So the harvest time, he knows exactly when it's time, the farmer knows when it's time to get it. And that's what Jesus told us. When it comes time, he's going to pray to the Father that he sends harvesters. Okay? Right now he's telling him, we need to sow. We need to sow to start getting it in. Jesus said in the parable of the sowers was key for understanding the other parables. We can say that the seed he speaks of here represents the word, as it did in the parable of the soils. Therefore, with this parable, Jesus shows the way the word of God works with hidden and mysterious power, just like a seed. We don't know how it works, but it gets in us. It starts filling that void. Just as a field's crop may become unnoticed when it's first planted, but can't be missed when it's mature. Right after I like to go down when they plant the winter wheat and look at it, because it just starts coming up, just little bitty sprigs, and it's going to be cool. And then in May, when that comes up, they're golden grain, up that high. Going out to one of our friends' house in Broken Arrow, go off 412 and go south for about 9 miles. And there's several wheat fields out through there, really pretty. Of course, when we was out in Kansas, that's what we saw a lot: wheat, corn, all the popcorn and the sunflowers, all that stuff. 30 through 34, actually.
Then he said, to what shall we liken the kingdom of God? Or with what parable shall we picture it? It is like a mustard seed, which, when it is sown on the ground, is smaller than all the seeds on earth. But when it is sown, it grows up and becomes greater than all the herbs, and shoots out large branches so that birds of the air may rest under its shade. And with many parables he spoke the word to them as they were able to hear it. But without a parable he did not speak to them. And when they were alone, he explained all things to his disciples.
Okay. So it's telling us how, in this particular example, the mustard seed, very tiny. I don't know if you've seen one, but it's very, very tiny. And it's saying if you're looking on the ground, you might not even see it because it's so small. But once it takes root and makes up, it is an herb, okay? And herbs don't grow very big. Most of them don't. They'll make little, things that high, and you cut them off, shallow. Some of the herbs, the basil and all that, they grow up a little bit. You cut them off and use that, and you cut them off again, but they don't get big. But the mustard seed, it's I don't so much say it's a tree, but it gets big. Say it could get big enough to where it have large branches, where it's big enough for the birds to get in it, land in it. Birds won't usually land on little flowers and stuff, because if they did, they'd fall over because the flower won't support them. But it's got to have a tree, a branch of some sort to support them, even though they're very light. They've got to have that. It says, some regard this as a beautiful picture of the church growing so large that it provides refuge for all the worlds. Could be that. Some other people also think that birds has in some of the parables, has a connotation of emissaries of Satan. Okay, because they're picking the soil, picking the seed up. That's what he's trying to say, that they're picking at the word of God, eating that word of God, getting it out. I'm not so sure I think that, but it could be. But it's just saying that it becomes a very large tree that can help support other. It says the growth of the kingdom will not result in the conversion of the world. In fact, some of the growth will give opportunity for Satan to get in and go to work. Whenever that happens, if people, Satan's really fine about letting you do what you want to do as long as you're not on fire. If you're not on fire for God, he don't care about you that much because you're not stirring up too much. But you start getting involved, start getting out there and getting people won to the Lord and things like that. We need to start doing more and more of that. 35 through 39, Iris.
On the same day, when evening had come, he said to them, "Let us cross over to the other side." Now when they had left the multitude, they took him along in the boat as he was, and other little boats were also with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves beat into the boat so that it was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on a pillow, and they awoke him and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" Then he rose and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm.
Okay. So it's almost an illustration of what he just talked about. You say, how so? What did he tell them? Let us cross over to the sea. I want to go over there. I'm going over there. I plan to be over there. Okay? But I'm tired, so I'm going to go to sleep. These were fishermen that had encountered a lot of storms out on that sea. They knew if it was, and it was getting them upset. Maybe not, I don't know, maybe not them so much, but it said there were other boats there with them. This is the first time we heard that. Maybe they weren't fishermen, and so the disciples are getting a little scared. Hey, these guys are getting ready to sink over here. But the disciples did say here in just a minute, hey, why ain't you bailing out here with us? You're good. But Jesus just woke up and he said, "Peace, be still," and the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he's going to get on to them in just a minute. Because he said, "I told you what I wanted to do. I wanted to go over there. You didn't have enough faith to believe me that we were going over there. Yeah, we're going to have a little storm in between, but we could make it." Now, he was testing them a little bit because they had that same authority that he did. They could have said that, but he didn't. It says, now the teaching was over, he was weary, he was craving for a period of rest, and so he bade his disciples to cross the lake. That was the moment to which our text refers. They took him even as he was. They didn't have anything else with him, no extra clothes, no anything like that. They didn't even send a messenger ashore. The crowd was over there, and he was probably hungry, and everybody there was, and they were probably put out with him like, "Gosh, you preached all day, now you're going to sleep, and we have to work all night." Could have been, who knows? So this is what brought up in their minds what was going on. It says he was asleep in the stern on a pillow. I don't know how big a boat it was, but if it was filling up with water, you would think he would notice that. We were asleep the other night. I can't remember what night it was. Doesn't matter. But I kind of halfway awoke and I smelled, oh my gosh! And there was a skunk outside. And I was like, we have them occasionally. We're the second house off of a pretty well-driven road. So they get whacked every once in a while, and we smell them. But Darla was like, she was gagging, and I was about to too. She had to go upstairs because she couldn't sleep because it's strong down there. And I said, "Is it under the bed?" I said, it was smelled like it was right there. I'm like, do we have a window open or something when it's 10 degrees outside? It's like, it was cold, and I'm like, how are we smelling it that bad? I don't know if it was just because I was half awake or what, but it was bad. Anyway, that story. But boy, I came instantly awake, So I was like, here I was like, man, if I could get sloshed on water and stuff, I think I'd have woke up. But
Yeah.
he was resting. He was in testing, like I said. Let's see. You want to read the last couple of verses there? Ruby on 14, the middle of the page.
Page 14.
Mark 4.
Yeah, 4:40 and 14.
In the middle, yeah.
Yeah, right there.
Oh, but he said to them, why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith? And they feared exceedingly and said to one another, who can this be that even the wind and the sea obey him?
Okay, so he's chiding him a little bit. I told you what I was going to do and what was going to happen, where we're going. But why are you so afraid? You know, shouldn't be a problem. But the way the writer puts it, they feared exceedingly. Now it may have been for I'm sure it was for their sakes, but also for the other little boats around them. All these things, and they were afraid, renewed, because it's like this guy, he even calms the storms, and the weather obeys him. But they ought to just click back to what he keeps telling them. I'm doing what my Father's doing. I'm doing what, he's talking about God. If they hadn't figured that out yet, and that's what
All these parables, they still haven't figured it out.
Well, they're not acting like it, and I get that. I don't know if I'd be the same way. Probably, it would be hard for me to understand when you see something happening right in front of your face.
Even he's asleep, but he's with them. So why they're so afraid when they know he's there? He's going to take care of them.
It's just that human nature, because it's overtaking us. That storm was overtaking them, and they thought the water started coming in, and they just didn't have the faith.
You know, in all of this, he was teaching them. And when he left,
They started realizing.
Yeah, they knew then what, that they had been with Jesus. They're like this. A couple places, it said that they knew the disciples had been with Jesus, and that he was teaching them through all of these things about their dependence upon him and who he was.
That's right. It says, after all I've done for you, in you, and for you, how is it that you've lost your faith? The total calm of the sea should have filled them with peace, but instead it scared the life out of them, because this guy, he can calm the seas. Who can this be? It can only be the Jehovah Lord. In a span of a few moments, the disciples saw both the complete humanity of Jesus and the fullness of his deity. They saw Jesus for who he is, truly man and truly God. It says all this shows the abiding care Jesus has for his people. There are many Christians today who seem to think the boat is going down. I'm tired of this wailing on some of my friends who take that view. The boat can't go down. Jesus is on board. So it's like, it's not happening.
Church is not going to fail.
It's not going to fail. We can, you may fail or we may fail, but it's not going to fail. All right, I appreciate everybody coming out.
We really appreciate you teaching too.
We'll see you next
Really
week.
think you are a good teacher.